That's right, beards are coming to Arc Raiders. Probably the most requested customization feature ever is finally coming. We're also getting a new arc, a new map condition, and one of the Arc Raiders devs recently went into PC Gamer for a pretty extensive interview. And we've got some interesting insights to talk about the development of Arc Raiders, aggression-based matchmaking, and all that stuff. First, though, let's take a little look at what's coming February 24th, the Hurricane map condition. What you need to know. Raiders, the Rust Belt 2081. It's a doozy. The climate is damaged and unpredictable, causing violent weather events across the surface. You've already experienced some of them, but southern Italy is about to kick up another challenge to raiders who dare to brave the surface. Speranza has weathered storms before, but none quite like the approaching hurricane. Citizens can hear the screeching winds from the refuge below ground, winds that batter and bruise raiders foolhardy enough to venture up. Shani is preparing to lock down. Nobody leaves. But to a raider, that's just too tempting, isn't it? Right, let's have a quick look through the trailer where there's a couple teasers for things to come, and then we'll go through how the Hurricane map condition works. Before we continue, thanks to Player for sponsoring today's video. Click the link in the description to get all of these champions as you play on a new account in Raid Shadow Legends. So, Hurricanes, as we can see here. Damn battlegrounds in the background. Debris flying through the air. And now you'll see the first detail here, right? As the debris is flying through the air, it hits the player and damages or breaks their shield. So that'll be one of the hazards of this new mode. A spacebar.
Pick up.
And then there it is. Look at this. The new arc. This is not anything we've seen before. It's some kind of ground-based arc that is outdoors. Let's have a look at how it moves here. It has a blinking eye.
Come on, pick up, Celeste.
All right, let's just watch that very slowly back here. So it really is a very small glimpse, but it has absolutely a new arc. Look at the eye. We've never seen it before. It's a blinking sort of oval shape eye. It goes red, and then it almost looks like it's rolling, or at least moving down on the ground, very low down to the ground. So we've got some kind of like ground-based arc that moves quickly. Oh my God, that looks hilarious. And then we also have beards. Look at that. That literally just that alone just upgrades the aesthetic of Arc Raiders massively. It's crazy to me. The skin also looks pretty awesome. Not gonna lie. Looks like they're finally starting to really up the cosmetics. This guy looks like a proper Toledo pirate or something, dude. He looks amazing. Right, let's take a little look then at the rest of what is going on here with these Hurricane map condition. And then we've got some tidbits to talk about in terms of a dev interview where one of the devs revealed some pretty interesting stuff. So, Hurricane will strike on February 24th. During this new map condition, raiders will need to contend with several intense gameplay challenges. Wind. The wind will change how you navigate topside. When you have a tailwind, you'll feel fast and nimble, but fighting against the gales will inhibit your speed and quickly drain your stamina. So I guess if the wind is blowing in one direction, you've got to try and play with it. Throwables will also behave differently in these conditions. That's interesting, and it may take a while to master the trajectory of thrown items like grenades. That is definitely going to make the gameplay interesting. I don't know what map conditions are going to have this. Probably Dam, Spaceport, Buried City, probably all of the outdoor maps. So maybe that would be a good way to nerf nades. Although, to be honest, nades are more of a problem on Stella than other maps. Still pretty interesting. Let's see what else. It says even jumping is affected by the power of the hurricane. Interesting. Debris. So we saw this in the trailer. The gale forces of the hurricane will inevitably kick up dirt and debris from the surface. Your shield was not built to handle this onslaught and will glitch and spark as it is struck by small items. Out in the open, this will degrade your shield and make you more visible to other raiders. You have to decide when to wear your shield and when it becomes a hindrance. Interesting. So it's trying to suggest that maybe we should just not have our shield on? I'm curious how that mechanic will work then. That's very interesting. Visibility. The skies have shifted and low clouds make topside almost unrecognizable. Your vision will be limited, meaning Ark can easily become an unwelcome surprise. Stay vigilant and try to listen through the howls of the wind to gauge the danger. Low visibility can also be turned to your advantage. When shieldless, other rangers will find it harder to spot you amongst the chaos of the storm. That is certainly pretty interesting. Got a picture there of Down Battlegrounds extract. And then we've got first wave caches. A raider always sees the opportunity where others only see danger. Rumors are circulating of valuable raider caches, relics of the first wave that have been unearthed by the ferocious winds. If you can battle the elements, get through the arc, and outsmart the rival raiders, who knows what you might find. So it's another raider cache with, I guess, a different loot pool. First wave would suggest maybe it's got arc parts in it, maybe? We'll have to wait and see. All right, now let's take a look at this Arc Raiders full interview, where there's some pretty interesting tidbits about Arc Raiders. There'll be a link in the comment for this. It's from PC Gamer. You can go and read through it yourself, but I'll go through some of the bigger parts here. Here's a first interesting topic here. In hindsight, do you regret talking publicly about ABMM, aggression-based matchmaking? It feels like PvE-focused players now feel betrayed if they get attacked in their lobbies at all, whilst PvP players resent not being able to dine out on easy kills. How do you view the Discord, and how do you see the balance being struck forward? Really good question. It's been interesting because I think in the way that came up, it was never even intended to be discussed in that matter, because that isn't even correct as to how it works. We didn't coin the term aggression-based matchmaking. It's not nearly as binary as people think. There's no such thing as a friendly lobby or an aggressive lobby. The system is still mixing everybody, and everything's down to human motivation. Just because you're trending toward the more peaceful end doesn't remove the autonomy from other people making a choice about wanting your stuff. So I think people do feel, though, as though it's incredibly binary, and even shooting one raider one time just automatically puts you into an aggressive lobby, but that's not at all how it works. It's far more nuanced than that. Your engagement with PvP is part of the situation, and it's not as though one action does it. It's a series of rounds together and things like that. So basically what he's saying is there's a scale of aggression. It is not a PvE and a PvP lobby. There's a scale along the board, and if you want any proof of that, go and watch some streamers like Tfue who do a bunch of PvP. Look at his lobbies. Everyone's running Toros, Venators. And then if you're like somewhere sort of lower down the aggression rating, you're probably going to just run across a bunch of people with free kits. And then you've also got the very end of the scale where pretty much everyone is friendly and no one wants to hurt anyone because no one wants to leave those friendly lobbies. In my opinion, I think the way it works is it's based on a scale of how much damage you are doing on average per match. If you're doing a lot of damage per match, you'll be matched with other players doing a lot of damage per match, who are probably more likely to have higher value gear. If you do no player damage per match, then you're just going to go up against a lot of other PvE players. So it's not binary, it's more of a spectrum, but it's still a thing, and it's still very easy to be gamed. I think that the devs need to realize and accept that it's certainly a gameable system, but it's a hard system to get right. We now have an audience of players that only want to PvE. We have an audience of players who only want to PvP. And we have an audience of players somewhere in the middle. How do they balance for that? I think the aggression-based matchmaking helped Arc Raiders to be pretty successful. If it wasn't for aggression-based matchmaking, I think a lot of the players who only play PvE games would never have even touched Arc Raiders. So it's definitely helped the game have a lot of success, but as players kind of finish content in PvE lobbies, the game will get boring for them. So how can they make that a little bit more spicy? Well, I guess the devs will have to try and figure that out. Let's see how this continues. I've been seeing people saying, well, if you're shot at, you should never even shoot back if you want to get into the safer end of the spectrum, but I feel like that's not the case. Yeah, it's not. It's not nearly that cut and dry. It's something we're continuing to tune, but we never really wanted to apply this mentality of it being a hard split of you either play this way or you do not play this way. The game needs that element of tension and risk from other players to be good. And of course, we acknowledge that people are having a lot of fun with these safer lobbies, but it's not prescriptive. We're never going to say, oh, because you play this way, you're only going to experience these types of people. It's going to be fine-tuned and always adjusted. So if you're finding that you're seeing some players that are killing you and you're not used to that, well, they're always making changes behind the scenes. My assumption, as someone who's covered games for a long time, is that you would want to keep the biggest cohort of players as happy as you possibly can. That includes both ends of the spectrum. So do you see this as something you're going to continue tweaking and tuning, but you broadly think that has been a success? That's sort of what we've been asking ourselves, because obviously the game mode of extraction carries a lot of inherent elements and expectations with it. And even as we've seen it in live, it's not at all how it was working in our tests. And I've had this experience myself. In the early alpha tests, nobody was really friendly. Everyone was just shooting. Like, there was no friendliness. It was hard to trust anybody. Everyone would fight and camp the extracts. The live game somehow just ended up being friendly. It's crazy how that happened. The devs couldn't have foreseen it because that never happened in any of the alpha tests. And I know because I took part. it wasn't for themselves in testing or for the previous public test. It was hyper aggressive in those tests. People never worked together. So just like I said, I think it kind of surprised us in exactly how many people did latch onto and are having fun with these elements of the game. So it certainly encourages us to lean more forward into giving opportunities to have friendly and fun interactions. So it's really interesting that somehow just developed on itself. People decided they want to be friendly. It's crazy. Now, during the Shared Watch event, I've been chilling in Bluegate on the top of buildings with 6 other players shooting arcs, and we're swapping blueprints. People are playing music. It's not what I expected from the game. I think a lot of people really like it, but how do you keep the very vocal PvP audience who just want to get in there and they get their kicks from taking your stuff? Well, I think that we just have to primarily make sure that the PvP side of the game is as fair as we can make it. And obviously, there's still things we need to work out with balance on some factors, Venator Toro, and giving them tools that are, of course, meant for player versus players combat. We still have the mantra, and this is even regardless of the formation of this PvE-heavy audience, that the game never asks you to fight other players. That's entirely your own decision. So you're always going to have people who have the motivation to fight because there are people who just like PvP. I think we need to keep making sure we're providing them with the tools and means to do that in an engaging way. But you're absolutely correct. We have this cohort of players who want to play more peacefully or roleplay even and ensure that we don't harm their experience either. So it's a precarious position. So I think the devs are also aware of the fact that this is not an easy thing to balance, right? You got so many different types of players all playing Arc Raiders at the same time. Adjusting and tweaking the matchmaking may ruin the experience for some people. So does the current system have some flaws? Yes, but whatever they change, they need to be very, very careful with. And then this is a really interesting one here. How much weight do the end of game surveys have in the matchmaking? A lot of people think it makes a difference. The dev replies, 0 factor. Those are just to help us gauge how players felt about the round. They have no mechanical change in what happens to you. It is solely based on your actions in the round. Those just go to our data team and help us pair up that things that occurred in the server. So that, and I understand why this sort of myth emerged, really messed with a lot of our PvP sentiment metrics, because it was meant to gauge of the PvP that occurred to you. Was it good? Do you even like PvP? And do you even like PvP or not? So then we get really weird graphs that don't match up with what we're seeing. So that myth is a myth. It doesn't change anything, which is really interesting. Okay, now they're starting to talk about the expedition. We're midway through the second expedition. How long do you see the loop of doing the expedition and then re-earning blueprints remaining interesting? I think I said this even early on when we did the initial blog post about the system. It is a bit of an experiment because we didn't want to force resets on everyone. Then now we're on this road of how do we make it more interesting enough for the largest amount of people to participate in this. There are issues with the thing itself. The currency system we have today was just what we had time to develop. And we reduced it, of course, for Expedition 2, just because even though at the time we calibrated 5 million coins around what the average player's economy looked like, it's still overshot in terms of how much people felt like they had to engage with it or how much they felt compelled to chase that. But because of other things that were actively in development, we didn't have time to shift the system to what we intend to do next, and we want to tie more game loops into it and not just make it about currency value. So ideally, we'll be able to talk about that fairly soon. So the current system is still based on how much stash value you have, but in the future, the expedition to get your skill points will have some kind of gameplay loop, maybe killing Ark or something like that. Do you think the expedition is likely to see major changes? I mean, I wouldn't say there's going to be major changes in one giant drop, but definitely we're going to try and adjust and shave off pain points and make sure that the incentives we are providing are catching what people find compelling. So like skill points probably won't hold forever. Of course, we don't want people to be able to max out the entire skill tree. So if you ever wondered if that was going to be possible, it's probably not going to be likely. There's probably going to be a cap to how many skill points you can get. That's not the way it's designed. And then, of course, at some point, we're very likely going to revamp parts of the skill tree. So then what other elements do we make part of the expedition system to keep it enticing? This next question is pretty interesting. Have you considered allowing players to bring a couple of their favorite blueprints across, almost like the safe pocket system, in order to prevent people from getting stuck trying to find one in particular? So the interviewer is asking, could we have like a blueprint carryover system? Maybe you could choose 1 or 2 blueprints as you go into the expedition. And the dev replied, that was an idea we even had before launch. It's a tricky situation because the blueprints in particular are such a power elevation. Now you have the autonomy to craft this thing very deliberately. And does that fit in? And then as well, if we ever make, and we have made, adjustments to the blueprint drop rates and things like that. But I certainly don't think it's off the table. Of course, it's a very rational thing for players to want to do, like, I work really hard for these, please let me have a few of them. So yeah, I wouldn't say no to any idea along those lines. It's mostly about how you balance what is kind of part of the core run-up through progression, and blueprints are a significant part of that. and actually getting them. I wonder if we can address that particular pain point by additional changes or systemic changes to how blueprints are found, acquired, or learned, rather than needing to feel like they have to come along with the expedition system. So, giving you better or more autonomy over how you acquire blueprints, for example, might alleviate some of the concern on that side of things. So I don't want to overburden the expedition system with things that we might not want to do. So they're still discussing it. Maybe there'll be changes to how we even acquire blueprints in the future. But for now, it's in discussion phases and there's nothing super big coming. And then here's a really good question. The interviewer asked, do the Ark use machine learning to learn and evolve over time, right? The question was not wanting to attribute intelligence when it isn't there, but is this the system that's creating those situations? Are the Ark genuinely learning new techniques, or are you using any AI-related tech? A lot of people think the Ark learn, but that's not the case at all. This is the reply. None whatsoever. That's just our AI designers and our AI engineers. To be specific, I mean AI in the game sense. It's the ones who author our enemies. That's their work. The machine learning is literally only for teaching them to walk and navigate the environment. It doesn't do any of their behaviors or their attacks or anything like that. So they used AI and machine learning to teach the Ark how to walk realistically. The way that the Ark interact with players is all coded and developed manually. There's a few other tidbits in this interview, so definitely check it out. I'll put a link in the description. Once again, thanks to Player and for sponsoring. You can check the link for that in the comments as well.